Please subscribe and share for more story. They never expected her to hear it. That was the first cold truth that settled into Maribel Hayes' bones. At 69, she had learned to recognize moments that split a life cleanly in two. She stood in the kitchen of the house she had lived in for 37 years, adjusting a brass serving tray so the late afternoon sun wouldn't glare across its surface. It was a habit she'd kept from her marriage, small care, quiet pride. That was when a voice drifted in from the dining room. "Make sure that one's hers," Talia said lightly, almost playfully. Maribel froze. "She won't last till dessert," Talia continued, laughing softly. "I don't want her interrupting the toast with one of her moods." There was a pause. Then Evan's voice, her son, low, tired, agreeing without agreeing. "Oh, relax," Talia added. "It's nothing serious. Just something to calm her. We deserve one peaceful night." Maribel's fingers tightened on the counter. Her heart didn't race. It stopped just for a moment, then restarted slow and heavy. They were talking about her. Her only child. His wife. Planning to drug her in her own home. Maribel turned toward the small mirror above the stove. The oak frame was chipped, the glass faintly cracked at the corner. Evan and Talia had given it to her years earlier for Mother's Day. She studied her reflection calmly. No tears. No shock. Just recognition. Those were the same eyes she'd seen at 58, the morning she buried her husband, Thomas. The same eyes that stared back when Evan once told her, smiling awkwardly, "Talia just does family differently, Mom. You'll adjust." And she had. For years, she had folded herself smaller, measuring her words, swallowing offense, pretending not to notice when she was sidelined. Tonight, something inside her hardened into resolve. She walked toward the dining room, counting each step, 9 in total, her slippers silent against the old hardwood. Evan and Talia stood close together, arranging cutlery, smiling like actors rehearsing affection. "Oh, there you are," Talia said brightly when she saw her. Maribel smiled back. The empty, practiced smile of survival. "I'll get the wine," Talia added, kissing Evan's cheek before disappearing down the hall. Maribel said nothing. She picked up the water glasses, hers and Talia's, and carried them calmly back to the kitchen. The kitchen felt quieter than before. Maribel filled both glasses with cool water, listening to the steady stream from the tap. When she returned to the dining room, Talia was still gone. With one smooth, unnoticed motion, Maribel switched the glasses. No rush. No hesitation. This was still her house, even if they treated it like a backdrop for their curated lives. They had insisted on hosting the anniversary dinner here. "It feels warmer," Talia had said earlier. More respectable. What she meant was useful, presentable, good for appearances. Maribel set the glasses down and took her seat, smoothing her navy dress. Moments later, Talia returned holding a bottle of red wine like a prize. "Your favorite, Maribel," she announced. Maribel nodded. How thoughtful. The others arrived soon after. Noah, her distracted grandson of 21, barely looking up from his phone. Iris, her 16-year-old granddaughter, gentle and observant, immediately helping with napkins. Candles were lit. Food was served. Talia raised her glass. "To family," she said, pausing just long enough to make Maribel uneasy. "And to keeping things smooth." She drank deeply. Maribel lifted her own glass, but didn't drink. Dinner continued with small talk that skimmed the surface of everything that mattered. School updates. Career plans. A possible vacation next summer. "Is the food all right for you?" Talia asked suddenly, her voice coated in false concern. "With your blood pressure and all." Maribel met her eyes. "We'll see," she replied evenly. Talia didn't hear the warning. She never did. About 15 minutes later, the shift began. Talia blinked more often. Her fork slowed. She pressed 2 fingers to her temple. "You okay?" Evan asked quietly. "Just tired," Talia muttered, sipping her water again. Minutes passed. Her words began to slur. Color drained from her face. The table grew uneasy. Then she slumped sideways in her chair. No, Mom. Iris gasped. Noah jumped up. Phone forgotten. Evan stood frozen, horror spreading across his face. Talia, he whispered. Maribel rose calmly. She took the wine glass, the source, and carried it to the kitchen. She poured the rest down the sink without ceremony. An ambulance was called. The explanation would be simple. Fatigue. Stress. No questions asked. Evan didn't go with her. He stayed behind, dazed, repeating, "She's just been working too hard." Maribel said nothing. After the paramedics left, the house fell quiet. Evan lingered by the door, avoiding Maribel's eyes. "You should rest too, Mom," he said weakly. "I will." He turned to leave. "Evan," Maribel said softly. He froze. "I heard everything." His face collapsed, guilt, fear, shame fighting for space. He didn't speak. He just left. Maribel locked the door and stood alone in the silence. It wasn't peaceful, but it was complete. Later, she cleared the table. The food had gone cold. Iris had folded her napkin neatly before leaving. In the kitchen, Maribel washed the dishes slowly. She felt no guilt, only clarity. This hadn't started tonight. Tonight had only revealed it. Years of money, of silence, of shrinking. As she dried the last glass, she whispered to the empty room, "I won't disappear quietly anymore." Maribel did not sleep that night. She lay in her bed listening to the familiar sounds of the house, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the hallway clock, each noise grounding her in a strange new certainty. The conversation replayed in her mind, not as chaos but as clarity. Talia's careless confidence. Evan's silence. She had mistaken restraint for harmony for too many years. By morning, her resolve felt solid. She dressed slowly, choosing soft gray slacks and a cream cardigan. She pinned the small silver brooch Thomas had given her 20 years ago, the last anniversary before his illness began. Tea steamed by the kitchen window while the garden sat untouched outside. Today was not for tending weeds. At 9:42 a.m., her phone buzzed. "Grandma, are you okay?" Iris texted. "Last night felt wrong. Dad said Talia fainted, but I don't believe it." Maribel smiled sadly and typed back, "I'm all right, sweetheart. Thank you for checking on me." She didn't explain, not yet. Some truths deserve time and care. Instead, she opened her laptop and logged into her bank account. What she saw made her chest tighten. 3 accounts, dozens of automatic payments, and her son's name threaded through them like a quiet theft she had willingly allowed. The list was longer than Maribel expected. Cell phone plans, car insurance, tuition payments, a luxury gym membership, monthly transfers she barely remembered authorizing. Over the years, each had felt small, temporary help, a bridge, a favor. Together, they formed a pattern of erasure. She picked up the phone and dialed the bank. "Good morning, Cedar Valley Trust," a cheerful voice answered. "This is Hannah. How can I help you?" Maribel took a breath. "My name is Maribel Hayes. I need to review the authorizations on my accounts." After the usual security questions, Hannah paused. "You currently have 64 recurring transactions each month. Would you like to cancel specific ones?" "All of them," Maribel said evenly. There was a beat of silence. Then, professionally, "All right. I'll suspend all automatic payments immediately. They'll remain paused until you provide written instructions." Maribel thanked her and ended the call. That was it. No shouting. No confrontation. Just a switch flipped somewhere unseen. By noon, the first message arrived. "Mom, my phone service just cut out. Did something happen?"
She didn't respond.
Instead, she made herself lunch and carried it to the porch. She sat in the old wicker chair Talia disliked and watched the sun drift slowly across the yard. Thomas's voice echoed in her memory. "If they only visit when money's involved, they're not visiting you." She had dismissed him then. She didn't now. The doorbell rang just after 2:15 p.m. Maribel knew who it was before she opened the door. Evan stood there rumpled and unsettled, his confidence stripped away. "Mom," he said, stepping inside without waiting. "We need to talk." She didn't offer him a seat. Did you call the bank? He asked. Yes. Why? Maribel folded her arms. You already know. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. Talia's been under a lot of stress. She didn't mean what you think. You mean putting something in my drink? He flinched. It was just melatonin. You altered my glass without my consent, Maribel said quietly. He hesitated. That part wasn't ideal. The understatement almost made her laugh. I paid for your house, she said calmly. Your children's school. Your insurance. Your groceries when your card declined last spring. Evans stared at the floor. And last night, she continued, her voice rising slightly, you stood there while your wife planned to put me to sleep, so I wouldn't embarrass you. He didn't deny it. His silence answered everything. So you're cutting us off, he said finally. I'm cutting myself free, Maribel replied. The kettle whistled sharply from the kitchen. She turned away, leaving him standing in the quiet he had chosen. After Evan left, Maribel sat alone at the kitchen table, watching steam curl from her tea. She didn't cry. She realized she hadn't cried in years. That dryness no longer frightened her. It felt like survival. The next morning, she opened the bottom drawer of the hallway console, the one untouched for years. Inside was a thick envelope labeled Evan. She spread its contents across the dining table. Copies of checks. Loan agreements, never repaid. Thank you cards scribbled with affection and entitlement. 17 years of generosity. One check for $5,400, nursery furniture when Talia was pregnant. Another for $11,800, labeled short-term help. And the largest, $38,000, the down payment on their house. They had toasted that night. Evan had texted, couldn't have done this without you. She wrote a list, dates, amounts, patterns. At the bottom, she wrote one sentence. A person's worth is not measured by what they give, but by how they are treated when they stop giving. Then she called Iris. Grandma, can you come by after school? Of course. When Iris arrived, Maribel told her the truth. The glass. The plan. The silence. Iris listened, eyes wide. She's been strange to you for years, she whispered. Maribel nodded. What happens now? I don't know, Maribel said honestly. But it won't be the same. That night, Maribel wrote a letter, not to Evan, not yet. She wrote to her lawyer, requesting an appointment to revise her estate and update her will. Her hand was steady as she signed her name. For the first time in months, she slept through the night. The days that followed settled into a quiet tension Maribel had never known before. No phone calls. No casual check-ins disguised as concern. Just silence, thick and revealing. She found herself noticing things she had ignored for years. How calm the house felt without bracing for criticism. How her shoulders no longer tightened at the sound of her phone. On the third day, a message came from Evan. Mom, we need to talk. Things are really tight right now. Maribel read it twice, then set the phone face down. Tight had always meant the same thing. Panic dressed as politeness. She brewed tea instead and sat at the kitchen table where so many quiet concessions had been made. Later that afternoon, Iris stopped by again. She helped Maribel water the plants and talked about school, about college applications, about wanting something different from the life she'd grown up watching. You know, Iris said carefully, Dad's angry. But he's also scared. Maribel nodded. Fear makes people honest. That evening, Maribel gathered documents into neat folders, bank statements, receipts, notes. She wasn't planning revenge. She was preparing boundaries. There was a difference, and she felt it clearly now. For the first time, she wasn't reacting. She was deciding. Evan showed up again the following week, this time with frustration barely contained beneath his practiced calm. You didn't have to do it like this, he said, pacing the living room. Like what? Maribel asked. All at once. The kids' tuition, the insurance, everything shut off overnight. Maribel folded her hands. That's how dependence works, Evan. Quietly. Until it doesn't. He stopped pacing. Talia's embarrassed. She thinks you're punishing her. I'm protecting myself, Maribel replied. She says you're overreacting. Maribel smiled faintly. She would. Evan rubbed his face. Can't we compromise? She looked at him, then really looked. The boy she'd raised. The man who had learned comfort from avoidance. I already did, she said. For years. He grew quiet. So what now? That depends on you, Maribel said gently. If you want a relationship, it won't be built on silence or money. He didn't answer. When he left, Maribel felt a flicker of grief, but it passed quickly. Some losses were simply illusions lifting. She locked the door behind him and returned to her chair by the window, sunlight warming her hands. Peace, she realized, wasn't loud. It arrived softly when you stopped betraying yourself. Talia didn't come herself. She sent messages instead, long, emotional paragraphs that shifted blame like furniture in a dark room. I never meant harm. You misunderstood. Families help each other. Maribel read them without replying. She recognized the language now. It wasn't apology. It was entitlement wearing distress. Instead, Maribel focused on rebuilding her days. She joined a morning walking group at the community center. She signed up for a ceramics class she'd postponed for years because it felt indulgent. Her life began to widen again, not with noise, but with choice. One afternoon, Iris called upset. They're fighting a lot, she admitted. Dad's stressed. Mom keeps saying you turned everyone against her. Maribel listened carefully. This isn't your burden, she said softly. I know, Iris replied. But I wanted you to know. I see it now. I always wondered why you went quiet. Maribel closed her eyes. That acknowledgement mattered more than any apology she would never receive. That night, she updated her will, leaving specific instructions. Not out of spite, but clarity. Love without protection had cost her too much already. This time, she chose both. Weeks passed. The crisis Evan feared didn't destroy them, but it exposed them. Tuition was renegotiated. Bills adjusted. Their lifestyle shrank. Reality moved in where Maribel once stood. Evan called less. When he did, the conversations were different, shorter, careful, stripped of assumptions. I didn't realize how much you were carrying, he admitted once. Maribel didn't respond right away. You didn't want to, she said finally. He accepted that quietly. Talia stopped messaging altogether. The absence felt like relief. Maribel spent more time with Iris, who asked thoughtful questions and listened without defensiveness. You're lighter, Iris said one evening. Maribel smiled. So are you. The house felt fuller now, not with people, but with honesty. She rearranged furniture, donated old things, let go of objects tied to obligation rather than memory. One afternoon, while sorting photographs, she found one of herself at 35, laughing, confident, unafraid of being seen. I remember you, she whispered. She pinned the photo near her desk, not as nostalgia, but reminder. Strength hadn't left her. It had only been waiting for permission to return. On a quiet Sunday morning, Maribel sat on the porch with her coffee and watched autumn settle into the trees. She thought of Thomas, of the life they'd built, of the mistakes she'd made trying to preserve peace at the cost of dignity. She didn't regret loving deeply. She regretted believing love required silence. Her phone buzzed. A message from Evan. I'm trying to understand. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I want to be. Maribel typed back slowly. Understanding starts with listening. She set the phone aside and breathed in the cool air. Whatever came next would be on her terms. She was no longer the quiet presence at the edge of the table. She was not an accessory, a safety net, or a convenient resource. She was a woman who had drawn a line and lived. Winter arrived quietly, as if respecting the changes Maribel had made. The house felt different now, lighter, less burdened by anticipation. She no longer waited for the phone to ring with requests disguised as affection. Instead, she filled her days deliberately. Mornings began with walks and conversation among strangers who knew nothing of her sacrifices and owed her nothing. Afternoons were spent shaping clay in her ceramics class, her hands rediscovering strength and precision. Evan called sporadically. When he did, his tone was cautious, stripped of expectation. "I'm learning how much I leaned on you," he admitted during one call. Maribel didn't rush to comfort him. "Learning is good," she said. Talia remained silent. That silence spoke louder than words ever had. One evening, Iris stayed late, helping Maribel decorate the house for the holidays. They worked side by side, no tension, no performance. "I think Dad's changing," Iris said. "I hope so," Maribel replied. "But change isn't something you promise. It's something you practice." As the lights came on and reflected softly through the windows, Maribel felt something unfamiliar but welcome, contentment without conditions. She had not rebuilt her life dramatically. She had simply stopped giving it away. The invitation arrived in early January, handwritten and tentative. Evan asked if Maribel would join them for dinner, neutral ground, no expectations. She considered it carefully before agreeing. Boundaries meant nothing if they weren't tested honestly. The restaurant was modest. Evan arrived alone. "Talia thought it would be better if it was just us," he said. Maribel nodded. The conversation was slow at first, cautious steps across unfamiliar ground. "I've been in therapy," Evan admitted quietly. Maribel raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "I didn't see how much I avoided conflict," he continued. "How I let things slide because it was easier." "And safer," Maribel added. "Yes," he said. They ate in silence for a moment. "I don't expect forgiveness," Evan said. "But I want to earn trust." Maribel studied him. "Trust isn't restored with words, Evan. It's restored with consistency." He accepted that without protest. When the dinner ended, there were no hugs, no forced closeness. Just a respectful goodbye. As Maribel walked to her car, she felt neither hopeful nor disappointed. She felt grounded. That, she had learned, was far more valuable. Talia resurfaced weeks later, not with apology, but necessity. A short message. Polite. Controlled. "Evan said we should clear the air." Maribel didn't respond immediately. When she did, it was brief. "We can talk when accountability is part of the conversation." There was no reply. Instead of waiting, Maribel focused forward. She finalized her estate changes, redirected her charitable giving, and set up a small scholarship fund at the local high school, quietly, without announcement. Iris helped her choose the criteria. "Why this?" Iris asked. "Because support should go where it's respected," Maribel said. One afternoon, Maribel found herself laughing freely with friends she'd made at the community center. She noticed how easily joy came when it wasn't rationed. That evening, she stood in the kitchen, the same place where everything had shifted, and caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked older, yes, but also clearer. "I see you," she said softly to herself. And for the first time in years, she believed it. Spring brought unexpected steadiness. Evan called more regularly, not to ask, but to share. Small updates. Honest reflections. "I'm trying to speak up," he said once. Maribel listened. She encouraged effort, not excuses. Talia remained distant, her absence forming its own boundary. Iris thrived. She visited often, stayed late, and spoke openly about her plans to leave home for college. "You taught me something," Iris said one afternoon. Maribel smiled. "What's that?" "That love without respect isn't love." Maribel felt emotion rise, but she let it pass gently. One Sunday, she hosted a small gathering, friends, neighbors, laughter without obligation. No performances. No fear. As she watched people enjoy the space, she realized her home no longer felt like a stage. It felt like refuge. She had not lost her family. She had redefined it. Some relationships survived the truth. Others didn't. And that was the point. On the anniversary of Thomas's passing, Maribel visited the cemetery alone. She stood quietly, hands folded, the wind cool against her face. "You were right," she said softly. She didn't ask forgiveness for the past. She thanked him for the lessons she had finally learned. Back home, she placed fresh flowers by the window and sat with her tea as the afternoon light warmed the room. Her phone buzzed, a message from Evan. "Thank you for meeting me where I am," Not where I pretend to be. Maribel typed back. That's how real relationships begin. She set the phone aside. Her life was not loud. It was honest. She had learned that dignity was not something granted by family, it was something claimed. And she had claimed hers fully. Summer crept in gently, the way good things often did, when Maribel stopped forcing them. Her mornings were unhurried now. She watered the garden she once ignored, letting weeds grow where they pleased and pulling only what truly choked the soil. It felt symbolic. Evan visited occasionally, always calling first. When he came, he brought nothing but himself. No questions about bills. No subtle expectations. I'm learning to sit with discomfort, he admitted during one visit. Maribel nodded. Discomfort teaches faster than comfort ever will. He smiled faintly, unsure but trying. Their relationship had changed shape. It was thinner but honest. And honesty, she discovered, weighed less than resentment. After he left, Maribel sat alone on the porch and realized something surprising. She missed the idea of family more than the reality she'd lived with. Letting go of that illusion felt like exhaling after years of shallow breathing. She wasn't lonely. She was finally alone without fear. Iris graduated that June. Maribel sat in the crowd, clapping until her hands ached, pride swelling quietly in her chest. Iris found her immediately afterward, eyes shining. I did it, she said. You always were going to, Maribel replied. They took pictures together, just the two of them. No tension. No performance. Later, Iris admitted, I don't want to grow up thinking silence is love. Maribel held her gaze. Then don't. That night, Maribel wrote Iris a letter, not advice, but truth. About boundaries. About kindness, without self-erasure. About the danger of confusing endurance with virtue. She sealed it and placed it in a drawer labeled, when you need it. Maribel knew now that legacy wasn't money or property. It was permission. To speak, to leave, to choose better. Talia reached out once more in late summer. The message was shorter than before. I owe you an apology. Maribel read it carefully. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt calm. She replied, if you're ready to take responsibility, we can talk. Days passed. No response. Maribel didn't wait. She spent her time volunteering at the community center, mentoring women who had spent years shrinking themselves to survive families that called it love. She never told her whole story. She didn't need to. Listening was enough. One woman asked her once, how did you finally stop? Maribel answered simply, I believed myself. That truth had cost her comfort, but saved her dignity. She would never trade it back. Autumn returned, completing the quiet circle of change. Maribel hosted a small dinner, friends, laughter, ease. No seating charts. No scrutiny. Someone spilled wine on the tablecloth. They laughed and wiped it up together. Maribel caught herself smiling at the simplicity of it all. Later that night, alone again, she stood in the kitchen, the same place where everything had broken open, and felt no pain. Only gratitude. She understood now that strength didn't arrive with anger. It arrived with clarity. And clarity stayed. Evan called one evening, voice steadier than before. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. Maribel smiled to herself. Then you're learning. They spoke briefly, comfortably. No heaviness. After the call, Maribel realized she no longer needed closure in the dramatic sense. Closure wasn't an apology. It was peace that didn't depend on one. She slept well that night. On a crisp morning, Maribel opened the drawer containing old photographs. She removed the ones that carried weight without warmth and kept the rest. She framed a picture of herself at 40, laughing, unapologetic, and placed it on her desk. That's who you were, she said softly. And who you still are. She had not become harder. She had become truer. There was a difference. Maribel sat on the porch as evening settled, the sky painted in quiet colors. Her life was smaller now, but it fit her. She had learned that love offered without respect becomes obligation. That silence mistaken for peace becomes erasure. She would never disappear quietly again. And she didn't need anyone's permission to take up space. She already had. Thanks for watching. If you value stories of respect, dignity, and justice, please subscribe. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing the lessons life has carved into me.